This is Palestinian Maklouba, and it's best eaten upside down. I'm not talking about the act of sitting upside down while eating, but rather flipping the dish over, which is where it gets its name. It has layers of fried vegetables, tender meat and loads of seasoned rice, which is cooked then flipped and served upside down. I'm Obi, and today I'm going to show you how to make Maklouba, one of the Middle East must-try rice dishes. There are 4 essential components that make up a Maklouba dish: meat, vegetables, rice and stock. The meat and vegetables are pre-cooked, then layered in a pot with spiced rice before it's all cooked in the stock. As a concept, you could change the vegetables, remove the meat or add in other components to make loads of different combinations. The 2 traditional Palestinian versions are chicken with cauliflower or beef with aubergine, but the recipes for these will differ from house to house. In other Middle Eastern countries, you'll find people adding chickpeas, carrots, onions, potatoes or tomatoes, so feel free to experiment and try it with different vegetables or with no meat at all. I also have a recipe for my mother-in-law's Maklouba with veal and aubergine, which I consider to be one of the greatest dishes of all time. Today we're going to make a chicken and cauliflower Maklouba the traditional Palestinian way, and so the first thing we'll prepare is a fresh chicken stock. Now I get this question a lot when I make stock: is it really worth making from scratch rather than buying? And my answer is always yes. Making stock takes very little active time, and it can be done while you're preparing other components. The flavour of fresh stock is infinitely better than the pre-made stuff, and you can control what goes into it so you aren't changing the flavour profile of your dish. You can also make stock in a pressure cooker to speed up the process, but it usually only takes me 40 minutes in a regular pot. First thing I'll do is add 2 tablespoons of oil to my pot and heat it on high heat. Next I'll add in my chicken skin side down, and I'm using 1 kilogram of chicken thighs and drumsticks, which work best in Maklouba. Let these sear for about 5 to 9 minutes on the first side until they are golden brown, then flip all of your chicken over. Sear them on the second side for another 5 to 9 minutes until they have completely browned all over, and when they look like this you can take them out of the pot. Now you'll add in your whole spices, and here I have 4 bay leaves, 15 cardamom pods and 2 teaspoons of black peppercorns. When in the pot I toasted these for about 2 to 3 minutes until they were well browned and aromatic. Now add in about 3 large onions, which you should chop to a medium dice and cook over medium heat for 4 to 5 minutes until they soften. The onions will deglaze the pot and pick up all of the browning that came from the chicken. Next I added 4 cloves of garlic, then I sauteed this for another minute before adding in the chicken. Add all of your seared chicken back to the pot as well as any liquid which came off of them. Following that, add 4 teaspoons of salt to the pot, then fill the pot with enough water to completely submerge the chicken. At this point you can turn the heat to high and allow the pot to come to a boil. This is the exact same process I'd use for a meat stock, which only needs to cook for a slight bit longer. When it boils you'll just skim the foam off of the surface, then cover the pot with the lid set ajar and let this simmer until your meat is done. I like to let my chicken stock cook for 40 to 50 minutes, and this time when I opened the pot I was greeted with this beautiful golden stock. Because we seared the chicken so well, we have got a stock with a deep chicken flavour, and I actually went right ahead and drank a whole mug of this stock. Fish your chicken pieces out of the stock, then use a strainer to remove all the onions and spices, leaving you with a perfectly smooth chicken stock. This will give the dish so much flavour, and it's the most important step when making Maklouba. Now while that stock was cooking, I went ahead and prepared the cauliflower. First thing I did was take 1.5 kilogram of fresh cauliflower and I sliced it into large florets like this. Traditionally you'd fry the vegetables for a Maklouba, so you can try an air fryer or try baking the vegetables for a healthier option. I personally always go the traditional route, so I filled a pan with about 1 inch of frying oil, and when it was hot I added in my cauliflower. This needs to fry in batches for about 5 minutes on each side until you've got the cauliflower well browned all over. Remove your cauliflower from the pan and let it drain on some paper towels to remove the excess oil. As soon as it comes out of the pan, make sure to dust it with some salt. I also fried 4 cloves of garlic, and these will also go into the pot for extra flavour. When done you'll have loads of fried cauliflower, and even though I don't like cauliflower in most dishes, this fried stuff is really addictive. Now we can turn our attention to the rice. For the traditional Palestinian recipe you'll want medium grain rice like this Egyptian one, but you can also use basmati rice, which is more of the Iraqi style. One hack is to use half a cup of basmati rice in place of the Egyptian rice to give the Maklouba a stronger structure. Then you want to let it dry in your colander for at least 15 minutes. Once the rice is dry, place it in a bowl and we'll now coat it in a load of spices. The spices I'm using are 1 teaspoon of cardamom, 1 teaspoon of baharat or 7 spice, 3/4 of a teaspoon of black pepper, half a teaspoon of turmeric, and 3 teaspoons of salt. Once on the rice, you want to gently mix it so you don't break the rice until all the individual grains are coated like this. Then I added in 1 tablespoon of oil and mixed it once more, which will help prevent the rice from sticking together. And now we can finally begin assembling the maklouba. First thing I'll do is scatter a few tablespoons of rice at the base of the pot. It's quite common that the bottommost layer can stick and burn, so this rice will act as a sacrificial layer so everything else comes out fine. On top of that first layer, I am adding some thick slices of tomato, which will also help prevent sticking, but I actually think potatoes work better as they will absorb any excess liquid. Next up, I added in the cooked chicken, and you want to lay the pieces skin side down while filling most of the gaps. Cover the chicken in a light layer of rice and fill in the gaps with the rice so the pot doesn't settle. Place your fried cauliflower on top of this rice layer with some of the fried garlic so that you have a nice even thick layer of cauliflower all the way around. The final layer will be your remaining rice, and once you spread it into a level layer, the maklouba is ready to be cooked. Place your pot on the stove and start pouring in the filtered stock. I'm pouring it over this ladle so it doesn't disturb the rice, and when it gets right to the top of the rice, you can turn the stove on. Turn your heat up to high and cover your pot and let it come to a boil. Once boiling, set a timer for 5 minutes, then when those 5 minutes are up, turn your heat down to low and keep the lid on the rice so that it can steam. Let this steam for a total of 20 minutes, and when done your rice should look something like this. Lastly, you'll take about 2 tablespoons of oil and pour this around the walls of your pot, which should help to firm up the structure. Add a kitchen towel between your pot and lid and let it steam for 10 more minutes. At this point you can turn off the heat completely, and you want to let the pot rest for about 15 minutes. Now comes the fun but nerve-wracking moment of flipping the pot. Get a large plate and place it over your pot, then in one quick motion flip the 2 over. The final step is to let this settle for another 10 to 15 minutes before going for the big reveal. If you're lucky, your maklouba will stay intact as one whole piece, but it's way more likely to fall apart immediately. The tomatoes or potatoes will stick in the pot, and if they aren't too burnt, you can eat them. Either way, the maklouba will be a perfectly delicious meal, and the flip definitely makes for some interesting theatrics. Feel free to top this with some chopped parsley and pine nuts and serve it while piping hot. It does take a load of time to make, but I can guarantee you your guests and family will remember it for a long time. I've got a portion here, and with it I've got some Greek yogurt which I topped with a tiny amount of salt, and this is the perfect accompaniment to maklouba. Let's get a bite with everything. There is just so much flavour in this plate. The cauliflower has browned nicely, it's caramelized, and it tastes amazing. It just pairs perfectly with the chicken. And the chicken itself is very lightly spiced. It tastes like the broth, but it's just perfect for this dish. The rice, you can taste the turmeric and you can taste the cardamom and the other spices, and you can also taste the broth in there. And with yogurt, it's like the two were made for each other. I swear this is one of the best dishes in the Middle East, and it's something you should definitely try.